Our second panel, we are going to speak to three founders. It's going to be moderated by Laura Smith, who I shall invite on now. And she will be speaking to Nafisa Bakkar, who is the founder of Amalia, which is a media platform for Muslim women. She'll be speaking to Nina Mohanty, who is the founder of Bloom Money, which is a platform that looks at financial inclusion for immigrant communities, how they can make more money. And she'll be speaking to Janet of Janet's List, who looks at Black built and created products and services. And they're going to be speaking about how they serve a niche audience and what that entails and how they have learned from it and what you can, as much wider serving communities, do too. And they are not charities, they are profitable businesses. So invite them all on stage. Thank you so much. The iPad, just click the button. The iPad just unlocks for the click of the button.
Okay, thanks.
You can get a picture of me on the TV.
Okay. Oh God, bright lights. Hello, my love. All right. Well, all right. Lovely to see you here today. Now, we were talking to investors previously, and we're getting to understand about what they're looking at, and we understand that when you're investing in businesses that have a focus on diversity, obviously, it's not a charity. People are trying to make money, of course. I want to talk with some people today to give some insight in terms of what it's like to build these businesses, particularly if you find these are underserved communities. Now, we have some wonderful folks here today. We've got Janet. Janet is the founder of Janet's List, of course. We've got, Nafisa. Nafisa is actually the CEO of Amalia and very relevantly the author of a book called How to Make Money. Definitely check that one out. We've got Nina over there, who is the co-founder and CEO of Bloom Money. And, today, let's talk about the communities that you were built to serve, okay? Just background, I'm a researcher. I love data. I'm founder of Validate Research. We look at DEI. And one thing I want to see from you all is, which communities are you building to serve? And how is that working in your business? What does that look like in your business that the solutions you're producing, okay?
Yeah, I can go first.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Janet. I'm the founder of a business called Janet's List. And what we do in a nutshell is we curate incredible brands and art by Black women and women of color in the UK. Mm-hmm. And we enable people to discover and buy from them in physical pop-up concept stores in mainstream city locations. And the reason why I specifically focused on Black women and women of color, not just because of the intersectional aspect, but because they're one of the fastest growing demographics, Black women in business. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I always try and achieve when people come into our spaces is that for Black women and women of color, they feel that they're in a space that is welcoming to them and that is for them, which is not something that they often encounter on the high street. But then for everybody else, with a sense of curiosity, they'll be standing outside the shop and they'll be like, what are those cute things? What's going on inside that space? And then they come in and they have the conversation and they get good items and products that they love. And then they realize for the first time that they're in a space which is all the brands and art are by Black women and women of color. Mm-hmm. So although our focus is on Black women and artists in business, our services are for everybody. Because I firmly believe that, if we want to have a fair and equitable world, everybody has a role to play in that.
Absolutely. Now, with Amalia, especially, there you are also working with founders, or you're working with people of color and such. Who are you actually serving with your service there?
So we are serving Muslim women. We are a media company, and every month we reach 7.2 million across our channels. I recognize the irony of having this conversation here because Estonia ranks quite high for being an atheist population. But in the context of global and UK, so the Muslim population makes up 2 billion across the globe. Mm-hmm. And in the UK, we make up 6.5% of the population, which has increased by 33% in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. So similar to the panel previously, huge growing demographic, lots of opportunity, and essentially brands come to us to reach that demographic. So brands like Dove, Universal, Lush, who are also recognizing that, similar to investing, if we don't change what communities we're investing in our marketing, in our advertising, and who we're building relationships with, very soon you're going to be speaking to a minority.
That is true. So I love this. You're working with some very big name brands there. You're actually, in that sense, you're producing value for various communities through leveraging the underrepresented people that you're serving. Now, you're actually more directly working with those underrepresented communities, and that's the value that you're producing for them. Tell me about the communities that you're serving and that business you've built around them.
Yes, absolutely. So Bloom Money is an early stage fintech company. We were founded in 2021, and our mission is to accelerate the growth of generational wealth, specifically for diaspora communities. So what does that mean? That means anyone who is an immigrant who has chosen to make a new life for themselves, currently in the UK, but hopefully eventually, touch wood, across Europe. And what that means is we are very much betting on the economic force that immigration is. We are betting on the people who come to a new country, decide to set themselves up far from home, who currently are probably served best by remittance companies, sending money back home, often to the global south. And we are trying to reimagine the way that financial services could look if we actually consider a culturally appropriate approach to financial services in the Western world. So yeah, just a small thing, small challenge to work on.
Well, I love this because here's the thing. You're not just building for people, you're building with people, all right? And I love the value that you're creating. Now, I'm curious, how has that value, in that sense, the thing that you've produced, been shaped very directly by that community? What makes it look different from the mainstream solutions out there? Let's start out.
Shall I kick us off? Oh gosh, okay. Well, let's start with this. We're in the Western world, right, writ large currently. The company is based in the UK. I'm an American by birth. And in the Western world, we have a very one-on-one relationship with banking. You know, you go to the bank, maybe you don't even go to the bank anymore, maybe you just use an app today, but I remember the days when we would go into a bank and you had a relationship with your banker. In many cultures, that is not the case. My father is Indian, my mother is from Taiwan, and very much in the global south, the approach to banking is far more communal. It is social. There is social trust amongst groups of people. And so our very first product is called Bloom Circles, and it's actually a digitization of an existing behavior, which I think many of our cultures all do, which is a group of people coming together and pooling their money. It's called different things, committee, ajo, esusu, as you might know it, Janet. I know it as chit funds or hui or he hui in Mandarin. And everyone in the global south is doing it. But in the West, we just can't fathom the idea of a group of people coming together in this informal way. And so when we set out to build Bloom Money, it was very contrary to what already existed, but being able to go into the communities, into immigrant communities, and see aunties getting together and doing this really informed how we built the product.
I love that. And I'm thinking about that opportunity that you saw there. When you saw this, what was the size of that? When you think about this financially, we think about that overlooked opportunity. What was that for you? What did you see?
So on my deck, I put 26 billion. And since then, I have realized that we are just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Because we are starting with this social savings group. But I think, as with all of our businesses, we kind of go into it and go like, yeah, immigrants or whatever. And we're like, maybe what's the lifetime value of that? And let's work backwards and try and figure out the market sizing. But since then, it was like striking gold, where we drilled down on this one thing, and then underneath, it was like a whole cavern of just so many other things that we could digitize, different behaviors that are not currently being served, different life stages that the current financial system doesn't serve, which is delightful. So, my next deck, we're going big, like 50 billion, 100 billion, 1 trillion, why not?
Raise it up to reality. That is. That's fantastic. Janet, now when you were building your business and you were thinking about the groups of people that you're going to serve, how did that affect what you actually built there?
So I was very clear from the beginning that this was going to be my lane. It was going to be Black women and women of color, but create a offering that speaks to everyone. So just touching on what you said in terms of the touch points for what we offer that is really unique. For a lot of the brands that had pop-up items in our physical pop-ups, they had never had an item in a physical shop before, despite trying with all of the high street brands you know and love. I know the Black women sitting in the audience today who can remember 10 years ago, you couldn't find tights in your color, you couldn't find makeup in your color. So that's something that was very real and familiar for us. When you think about just on the brands as well, because we have such a unique offering, we always get PR, we always get press. And that's something for the brands, again, that they've struggled on their own because, you know, we don't always get the visibility that a lot of the businesses that we have in our physical pop-ups deserve. But another important aspect is the community. And a couple of things. When we had our pop-up in Amsterdam, I had a man come in who his job day to day was placing shops in retail. And this man had the audacity to walk into my shop and tell me that he didn't think that my shop deserved to be on the street that it was. I mean, this was a really good street in Amsterdam, and I chose it on purpose. And I told the lady who works with me in the shop to man the shop. And I told him that there was a very specific reason why we had chosen this location, because again, our brands are for everybody. And I kid you not, every day that week, that man would come and walk past the store, and he would be shocked that there were people of all different backgrounds coming in and buying.
Did he ever come in and buy something?
Of course not. Of course not. You know, he had this thesis in his mind that he was trying to disprove, and every day he came in, there were people in the shop. So, you know, this idea that certain things are for certain people, no. Yes, the brands might be Black women, women of color, but they are for everyone. And 7 times over, in different concept stores, in different parts of London and in Amsterdam, we've proved that.
Well, see, now I'm curious, though, because this person's probably not the only one with a thesis in his mind that he's trying to challenge regarding businesses that are built for niche communities, or basically the global majority in that sense, all right? So now, this is interesting. I kind of want to know from you, Nafisa, if you're talking about the business that you've built and you're thinking about the challenges that you've had to overcome with those expectations, perhaps, that people might have about what your business is going to do and how profitable this is going to be, how successful this is going to be. Tell me about how that's gone for you.
Yeah, God, can talk about it all day. I think, you know, Anissa in her intro mentioned, like, she's very clear on saying these aren't charities, they're businesses. And I think often we do get pigeonholed into, because we're for a specific community, and Chanel also touched on this, we're not impact, we are businesses. And the way this plays out is a couple of ways. So for example, you might be speaking intro to the wrong person, but at the right company. So when people see companies like us, they think, okay, you should be talking to the head of diversity, or maybe PR, or maybe a nice little head of community. And I had periods of time where I was constantly being introduced to those people. They loved what we were doing. They're like, this is amazing. I'd go back to the office and I'd be like, I've had an amazing meeting. We're going to be working with this company. Silence. And so what I've realized is the people that love what you do aren't necessarily the people that are going to pay for what you do. And that is the big difference in building businesses for niche audiences. And so when I started speaking to different people, head of growth, head of partnerships, head of scaling, head of, you know, brand growth, the conversation changes because they're the people with the budget. You know, and then to double down on that, what often happens is data drives decision making. When it comes to niche communities, we've all had lots of headline stats of like global majority, we're the biggest, but when you start niching down, the data starts getting quite sparse.
That's true.
But that also lends to a really big opportunity, because if you're from that audience, if you're building from that audience, you can start creating the market intelligence and creating the market. So now we're in a position where if a client comes to us, so for example, last week a breast cancer charity came to us and said, we index really low on women of color, and Muslim women in particular. We were able to then poll our audience, and 77% had never been taught properly breast cancer screening education, and only 24% were checking once a month. So then when you're going back to the client and saying, hey, here's the stats on our audience, it no longer is a nice thing to do. It's a very compelling business decision, which is what the whole panel previously was of. This is about how to make money. This isn't just about how to be a nice person in the world.
Yeah, I can jump in on this. Our very first pop-up when I was looking for space in London, I was over-prepared. I think I'm a credible person. I was an ex-barrister. I was ready. I had to go through 15 spaces before someone would give me their pop-up. Wow. And as part of the deal, I had to make sure that his dog in the back was happy and well-fed. Okay. That's what got me my first pop-up. After that, I realized that brands want the thing that you have without doing the work. Yeah. So I've gotten to this stage where sometimes you pitch to people and they don't see the vision. So now I say, if anyone wants to come and work with us, come to our shop and have a conversation with me in there. And then at that point, they get exactly what it is that you're trying to do. And so for us, that's what led to our collaborations with Somerset House and Coco de Mer. But there are some real hurdles, particularly when you're trying to get in that first time.
And that's actually interesting, because I've been hearing from quite a few founders about how these expectations, how these hurdles limit essentially or shape how their business grows to a certain degree. Now, I would actually, let's go for some transparency here. When it comes to the businesses that you have, how are these funded, firstly, at this point? I know, before we kind of jump into like the realities of that, but how are you funded? Are you anybody self-funded with their company that you started off?
Listen, I'll go first. Yeah. Bootstrapped right from the beginning. I did not bother to go to banks because I knew that they wouldn't get it. Yeah. I spent a chunk of time early on where all I did was apply for grant funding, and there are not many of those, but we got 2 grants that really helped us out at the beginning. I understand that the type of business I have is not immediately scalable. So instead of wasting time on all of that, I was just very clear. I had my vision, I knew what I wanted to do, and I made sure that I had the funds to do it.
Nina, how about you over there? How's it going? For your business, how was it with the funding?
Yes, so we're a fintech company, which means that we are regulated, which comes with regulatory overhead. So we raised a venture capital round, a pre-seed funding round last year. And it was not a walk in the park. For anyone that was attending the previous panel, it is tough. My partner refers to me as a triple threat in that I'm a woman of color serving communities of color. And when, especially in London, a majority of the VCs are straight white men who went to Eton or Oxford, and the only immigrant that they seem to know is the guy who runs the kebab shop down the street, it can be a tough sell. And so it very much was coming equipped with the data. I did try a few other avenues, grant funding, for example, and that was also tough because, again, we're playing in a field that was not made for us. We don't even know the rules of the game. And so I applied for a grant and actually was told, because we're specifically serving immigrant communities, largely communities of color, that we were discriminating against white people. And that was a massive slap in the face, especially knowing how for decades, centuries actually, in the UK, we have discriminated against these particular communities. So it was lovely in the end to be able to close the round, and it's no coincidence that our cap table is over 50% people of color, almost 50% first or second generation immigrant, and 70% women by volume.
That is impressive. Statistically speaking, for your region, that's not, or actually globally, to be honest, that is quite impressive. Now, Nafisa, financial realities around your business, how has it been for you to be able to get funding, to be able to, you have a book about how to make money. I'm sure you know something about how to get money as well.
Yeah, so we started with £50 and just kind of bootstrapped, and then we went through an accelerator, raised investment from angels, and then we basically were on that path of raising angel investment. The next round would then be VC investment. And we got stuck in what I'd call the twilight zone, which I talk about in my book, where to go down the VC route is a very specific route versus to go down, say, a profitability route, which is what Anissa was also speaking about. And I kind of was looking around at the startups around me, and a lot of them very high burn rate, raising VC money, crashing and burning, because the failure rate is really high. And I was very, very aware that as a woman of color that has raised investment, you ain't gonna get another life if you burn it all in the way that other people do, right? And I was very, very conservative to the point that our investors were like, you need to spend more money. And we were like, we will spend money when we've got a product market fit, when we really know where we're going. Because, you know, we were very, I think, cautious on being like, this mission and vision needs to be stacked up with a commercial viability, and we need to find that viability. So now our commercial viability is through brand partnerships. We work with household names. They come to us because they want to reach our audience. And that very much then shaped how we then built the business as well. We weren't from a media background. And so when one of our investors were like, what you're doing is a media company, and we were like, what does that mean? And how do you make money from that? And so then my book was basically a book that was written for the younger version of myself who had no knowledge of investment, of capital, of VCs, of any of this world, who just felt naive enough to be able to take it on. And in the book, I talk about everything from I interview lots of different founders, everyone from Rich, who started Tray.io, which is basically a unicorn, to Mohammed, Uncle Mohammed, who started a chicken shop and scaled it to 140 stores. And I think what we've been talking about on these panels is the diversity of not only founders and people, but also what businesses look like and what success can look like.
You know what? I love this. I do love this. I have to pick up your book afterwards. One thing I want to know, though, is thinking about that person who started the business that you started. If you had to go back and give some advice to that young founder, or how about to some of the founders in here who are thinking about how can they build solutions that affect maybe their communities or maybe just underrepresented communities that they've been able to identify, what is some tip that you would give to them if they're looking to build that business?
Okay, so I have tips on an individual level, tips on a professional level. On an individual level, if you're serving a niche audience, if you're serving people who fall within the category of other, it is important to know that on top of running your business, you will be holding space for a lot of people. So you need to make sure that you have the personal capacity, the support, and the resources to be able to do that. Whether that's therapy, whether that's coaching, whether that's a brain trust. I had this idea that I'd lent my name to the business, and all I would be doing is focusing on sales. In fact, people come to the shop and they want to speak to Janet. And I'm like, shit, I am not an extrovert. And so I spend ages just holding space for people. So I have had to grow as a person on that front. I think professionally, and I can see there are lots of allies in this room, I get really annoyed when you see on Twitter, people are like, oh, please could you tell me all of the women in this space? Please could you tell me all of the black and brown people? If you haven't taken the time to develop your personal and professional networks to include that diversity, then you have work to do, because you shouldn't be asking those questions. People who genuinely have diverse networks know I am 2 degrees of separation from so-and-so. I am 3 degrees of separation from so-and-so. So if you feel that that's something that you could work on, I think that is probably a really good place to start. I think the third thing is people have this idea when you start a business that there's only one way to do it, which is you quit everything and you put your 100% focus on that. Some of us don't have trust funds, you know. I have worked part-time throughout while I've had my business. I have deliberately designed my life to be able to do that. And let me tell you, when the pandemic happened and retail shut down, it would have killed my business. But because I have an immigrant mentality and have always said that things have to pay for themselves, I was able to see through that. So anyone who's thinking of starting a business and is hearing this story that you have to go all in, there are very many ways to design the thing that you want.
I love that. Mentality is important, understanding there's a flexibility in the model. What would you add to that, Nafisa?
My first one would be that mission and vision doesn't make money, business models do. And so really hunt for that business model when you're starting. And one off the back of that is, I think a lot of startups died because they were actually businesses, and a lot of businesses died because they were actually startups. And it might just sound like wording, but ultimately we started as a startup, and you're like hunting for the business model.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're a business, the business model is there, you just have to execute on it. And I think there's a lot of people who start businesses who are trying to be a startup when actually there's a business model. You now need to get money into the business, otherwise you're going to die. And then my second one would be, if you're starting out, to first find your, what I call a cowboy 100K. And the cowboy 100K is you're just trying to get money into the business anyway, anyhow. And often when you're a niche business, a very good bridge is consulting, because you are an expert on this audience.
100%.
You go out to people who don't understand this audience, and it's a very good bridge to be able to start getting closer to the people who might eventually pay for a product or a service. And it's something I talk about in my book, and every founder I know has made that like cowboy 100K, where it's like, it's not really easy, it doesn't feel repeatable, it still feels quite hard, but money's happening, and you're literally like just hunting for the next bit. But then that gives you the platform to be able to make the real 100K, which is where it's repeatable, it feels easy, you can very clearly define who in a company or who your perfect target customer is that is going to write you that check.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people don't think about money early on enough in that way, because it's like growth, we're building users, but ultimately for your own commercial viability, you need to get money into the bank.
Okay, with a person who is about money and getting money into the bank or saving these things away, I'm sure you've thought about that, yes?
Yeah, I think just two quick things from me is, we're at this wonderful conference and we're celebrating entrepreneurship. And increasingly, apparently in the States, like the number one thing people want to be is an influencer/content creator, which,
Oh, wow.
I digress. But a lot of people now say they want to be entrepreneurs, they want to start a business. I have an idea. That's great. One thing that I always ask people who slide into my LinkedIn DMs is, what is the problem that you are obsessed with?
Yeah.
What is the problem that you cannot stop thinking about? For me, I was working at Klarna and side gigging with Bloom and speaking to people on the side, and it got to the point where I was dreaming about it. My wall was covered in Post-its, and it was just like, okay, you are living and breathing this, you are obsessed with the problem, only now do I feel like it's time to make that leap. So entrepreneurship is hard. We're at this lovely conference, but then I have to go and actually do my day job, right? And go stare at an Excel sheet until my eyes bleed. So you have to be obsessed with the problem. And second, if you're building for a niche community, it helps to be of that community. I feel like it needs to be said, but build for yourself. If you're building something for high net worth individuals, it helps to be a high net worth individual who knows a thing or two about the problems that high net worth individuals care about. I wouldn't know because I'm not one of them, so I'm not going to build that company. But I am an immigrant child. The story of Bloom is my parents and my story. And so it's a lot easier for me to get up and face the hardship of being a founder every day.
I love this. And I was actually just going to think about, do you feel that you actually have to be a part of the community to be able to serve or support these minoritized communities here?
I think if you're part of the community, you have a real understanding of what the issue is, but at the same time, everyone has a role to play in building a fair and equitable society. So we all have a role to play in that. And I think for many of us, we wouldn't have what we have if we didn't have the support of people in our networks. Nafisa, in your book, you talk about building a really strong and effective network. If there's one thing you can do, is really harness and foster that early on, even before you know what you need from them. And conversely, if you're sitting in this room and you have a strong and powerful network, open up that black book to everyone and share it with them.
I am so happy that you're part of our day, are part of our networks, and I hope you'll be around to be able to further network with people and be able to understand and support and share the knowledge that you have from your businesses. But thank you so much, and I love learning from you all. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to check them out, look them out on their businesses, LinkedIn. You can pick up Nafisa's book and learn some things more. But thank you so much. Have a great one, you all.
All right.